attended Mass and confession with zealous regularity, far more than the requisite holiday attendance fulfilled by other officials in the name of good public relations. When the Pope visited Paris a few years back, Fache had used all his muscle to obtain the honor of an audience. A photo of Fache with the Pope now hung in his office. The Papal Bull, the agents secretly called it. Collet found it ironic that one of Fache's rare popular public stances in recent years had been his outspoken reaction to the Catholic pedophilia scandal.
"These priests should be hung twice,"
Fache declared.
"Once for their crimes against children, and once for shaming the good name of the Catholic Church."
Collet had the odd sense it was the latter that angered Fache more. Turning now to his laptop computer, Collet attended to the other half of his responsibilities here tonight, the GPS tracking system. The image on screen revealed a detailed floor plan of the Denon wing, a structural schematic uploaded from the Louvre security office. Letting his eyes trace the maze of galleries and hallways, Collet found what he was looking for. Deep in the heart of the Grand Gallery blinked a tiny red dot. La Marque. Fache was keeping his prey on a very tight leash tonight. Wisely so. Robert Langdon had proven himself one cool customer. Chapter 9. To ensure his conversation with Mr. Langdon would not be interrupted, Bézu Fache had turned off his cellular phone. Unfortunately, it was an expensive model equipped with a two-way radio feature which, contrary to his orders, was now being used by one of his agents to page him. "Capitaine?" The phone crackled like a walkie-talkie. Fache felt his teeth clench in rage. He could imagine nothing important enough that Collet would interrupt his surveillance cachée, especially at this critical juncture. He gave Langdon a calm look of apology.
"One moment, please."
He pulled the phone from his belt and pressed the radio transmission button.
"Oui?"
"Capitaine, un agent du département de cryptographie est arrivé." Fache's anger stalled momentarily.
"Cryptography?"
Despite the lousy timing, this was probably good news. Fache, after finding Saunier's cryptic text on the floor, had uploaded photographs of the entire crime scene to the cryptography department in hopes someone there could tell him what the hell Saunier was trying to say. If a codebreaker had now arrived, it most likely meant someone had decrypted Saunier's message already.
"I'm busy at the moment,"
Fache radioed back, leaving no doubt in his tone that a line had been crossed.
"Ask the cryptographer to wait at the command post. I'll speak to him when I'm done."
"Herr," the voice corrected. "It's Agent Neveu." Fache was becoming less amused with this call every passing moment. Sophie Neveu was one of DCPJ's biggest mistakes. A young Parisian déchiffreuse who had studied cryptography in England at the Royal Holloway, Sophie Neveu had been foisted on Fache 2 years ago as part of the ministry's attempt to incorporate more women into the police force. The ministry's ongoing foray into political correctness, Fache argued, was weakening the department. Women not only lacked the physicality necessary for police work, but their mere presence posed a dangerous distraction to the veteran men in the field. As Fache had feared, Sophie Neveu was proving far more distracting than most. At 32 years old, she had a dogged determination that bordered on obstinate. Her eager espousal of Britain's new cryptologic methodology continually exasperated the veteran French cryptographers above her, and by far the most troubling to Fache was the inescapable universal truth that in an office of middle-aged men, an attractive young woman always drew eyes away from the work at hand. The man on the radio said, "Agent Neveu insisted on speaking to you immediately, Captain. I tried to stop her, but she's on her way into the gallery." Fache recoiled in disbelief.
"Unacceptable. I made it very clear."
For a moment, Robert Langdon thought Bézu Fache was suffering a stroke. The captain was mid-sentence when his jaw stopped moving and his eyes bulged. His blistering gaze seemed fixated on something over Langdon's shoulder. Before Langdon could turn to see what it was, he heard a woman's voice chime out behind him. "Excusez-moi, monsieur." Langdon turned to see a young woman approaching. She was moving down the corridor toward them with long, fluid strides, a haunting certainty to her gait. Dressed casually in a knee-length cream-colored Irish sweater over black leggings, she was attractive and looked to be about 30. Her thick burgundy hair fell unstyled to her shoulders, framing the warmth of her face. Unlike the waifish, cookie-cutter blondes that adorned Harvard dorm room walls, this woman was healthy with an unembellished beauty and genuineness that radiated a striking personal confidence. To Langdon's surprise, the woman walked directly up to him and extended a polite hand. Monsieur Langdon, I am Agent Neveu from DCPJ's cryptology department. Her words curved richly around her muted Anglo-Franco accent. It's a pleasure to meet you. Langdon took her soft palm in his and felt himself momentarily fixed in her strong gaze. Her eyes were olive green, incisive and clear. Fash drew a seething inhalation, clearly preparing to launch into a reprimand. Captain, she said, turning quickly and beating him to the punch. Please excuse the interruption, but...
Ce n'est pas le moment,
Fash sputtered. I tried to phone you, Sophie continued in English, as if out of courtesy to Langdon. But your cell phone was turned off.
I turned it off for a reason, Fash hissed. I am speaking to Mr. Langdon.
I've broken the numeric code, she said flatly. Langdon felt a pulse of excitement.
She broke the code?
Fash looked uncertain how to respond. Before I explain, Sophie said, I have an urgent message for Mr. Langdon. Fash's expression turned to one of deepening concern.
For Mr. Langdon?
She nodded, turning back to Langdon. You need to contact the U.S. Embassy, Mr. Langdon. They have a message for you from the States. Langdon reacted with surprise, his excitement over the code giving way to a sudden ripple of concern. A message from the States? He tried to imagine who could be trying to reach him. As a bachelor, he had no family, and his parents and very few colleagues knew he was in Paris. Fash's broad jaw had tightened with the news.
The U.S. Embassy?
He demanded, sounding suspicious.
How would they know to find Mr. Langdon here?
Sophie shrugged. Apparently they called Mr. Langdon's hotel, and the concierge told them Mr. Langdon had been collected by a DCPJ agent. Fash looked troubled.
And the embassy contacted DCPJ cryptography?
No, sir, Sophie said, her voice firm. When I called the DCPJ switchboard in an attempt to contact you, they had a message waiting for Mr. Langdon and asked me to pass it along if I got through to you. Fash's brow furrowed in apparent confusion. He opened his mouth to speak, but Sophie had already turned back to Langdon. Mr. Langdon, she declared, pulling a small slip of paper from her pocket. This is the number for your embassy's messaging service. They ask that you phone in as soon as possible. She handed him the paper with an intent gaze. While I explain the code to Captain Fash, you need to make this call. Langdon studied the slip. It had a Paris phone number and extension on it. Thank you, he said, feeling worried now. Where do I find a phone? Sophie began to pull a cell phone from her sweater pocket, but Fash waved her off. He now looked like Mount Vesuvius about to erupt. Without taking his eyes off Sophie, he produced his own cell phone and held it out.
This line is secure, Mr. Langdon. You may use it.
Langdon felt mystified by Fash's anger with the young woman. Feeling uneasy, he accepted the captain's phone. Fash immediately marched Sophie several steps away and began reprimanding her in hushed tones. Disliking the captain more and more, Langdon turned away from the odd confrontation and switched on the cell phone. Checking the slip of paper Sophie had given him, Langdon dialed the number. The line began to ring. 1 ring, 2 rings, 3 rings. Finally, the call connected. Langdon expected to hear an embassy operator, but he found himself instead listening to an answering machine. Oddly,